I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are just walking through your normal day.
Right.
Maybe you're heading into like a highly stressful meeting, or you're just trying to navigate the absolute chaos of a crowded grocery store.
Oh, yeah, the worst.
Right. And suddenly you hear this tiny, incredibly specific voice whispering in your ear. And it says, "Do not regard yourself as a dish."
It is such a bizarre, almost funny translation.
It really is.
But behind this strange phrase, which was penned by an author named Shifeng in an essay from April 2020, is just the surprisingly brutal autopsy of human arrogance.
Yeah, because this text, I mean, it isn't just throwing out quaint proverbs. It's aggressively breaking down what actually happens when our ego gets a little too big.
Exactly.
And the author takes us on this wild ride to prove his point. I mean, we're bouncing from cosmic observations about the literal universe to high-stakes historical, political rivalries, all the way down to a very sweaty, very awkward encounter in a jungle in Zimbabwe.
It covers a lot of ground.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all to dissect the mechanics of how, an inflated sense of self-importance directly engineers our own downfall.
Yeah.
So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks. Yeah, and he establishes the baseline for this philosophy right out of the gate, really by forcing us to look at our actual scale.
Right.
He starts with these sweeping, poetic reality checks. He writes, gaze up at the starry sky. The universe would still be brilliant with one star missing.
Which is, true. And then he applies that exact same logic to the Earth itself.
Yeah, he says to look at a river surging forward.
Right. It's still going to surge, even if it's missing one little stream.
Exactly.
Yep.
And he notes that the Earth is still going to rotate just fine if a great sage goes completely missing from history.
And I love this part. He points the camera directly at the reader. Just delivers this gut punch.
Oh, it's raw.
He says, consider yourself. The world would still be happy without you.
Yeah. It is a stark statement to read, just right there on the page.
It feels a little mean, honestly.
It does. But he follows it up with his core thesis, which is really this call to be humble, low-key, ordinary, and common.
To not take yourself as a dish.
Exactly. Do not take yourself as a dish. He argues that when you look back at the landscapes of life, the people who experience what he calls sad descents.
The ones who really suffer those catastrophic falls.
Right. They do so precisely because they took themselves as a dish.
I want to pull on this dish framing for a second, because the analogy actually does a lot of heavy lifting if we, map it out.
Sure.
Imagine you walk into a massive, sprawling, incredibly complex buffet.
Okay, I'm with you.
There are carving stations, a seafood tower, just dozens of sides everywhere.
Yeah.
And you walk in, look at this massive spread, and mistakenly believe that you are the main course.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You genuinely think, I am the prime rib, and this entire room was constructed just to feature me.
And if you believe you are the prime rib, your expectations of how the world should treat you shift dramatically.
Exactly. If you think you're the prime rib, you expect the heat lamps to be perfectly adjusted for your comfort.
Right.
You expect the chefs to constantly check on you. You demand the center of the table. And the second the temperature drops, or someone bumps the table.
You feel deeply personally betrayed by the entire restaurant.
Yes. Your expectation of special treatment is exactly what makes you so incredibly fragile. When in reality, in the grand scheme of this cosmic buffet, you're just one small, entirely replaceable part of the spread.
You're just a side dish.
Maybe you're a nice dinner roll.
Right, a dinner roll. And that fragility is exactly what the author is targeting here.
Yeah.
The initial sting of hearing the world doesn't need you feels depressing. Like you said, it feels mean. But if we look at the psychological mechanics of what he's proposing, there is actually a profound liberation in it.
Because it completely removes the target from your back.
Right. I mean, think about the sheer exhausting weight of self-importance.
Yeah, exhausting.
If you believe your company completely revolves around you, or your family dynamic rests entirely on your shoulders.
Every single slight feels huge.
Exactly. Every deviation from your plan, every tiny failure feels catastrophic. By accepting that the universe doesn't actually need us to function, we shed that heavy armor of self-importance.
Because the text argues that this inflation of the self inevitably separates you from the collective.
Right. You start demanding that the environment bend to your status, and when reality refuses, which it always does, you shatter.
It's one thing to accept that you aren't the center of the universe when you're just, an ordinary person going about your day.
Sure.
But what happens when the world actually gives you a massive amount of power? That's where the author turns to history to show us the mechanics of ego on just a massive scale.
He does, and he uses a highly politically charged piece of history here, specifically the rivalry between Communist Party founders Zheng Guotao and Mao Zedong.
Okay, and just a really quick note here before we get into it. We need to be very clear to you listening that we are looking at this historical event purely through the lens of the author's philosophical argument about ego and arrogance.
Right, absolutely.
We are not taking a side or endorsing the specific left-wing or right-wing political framing that the author relies on here. Our job is just to impartially report on the source material to understand the ideas.
Exactly. Our focus is strictly on how the author uses the specific narrative to illustrate the danger of thinking you're a dish.
Right. So let's set the scene based on the text. Zhang Guotao is a massive figure.
Huge.
He's one of the founders of the Communist Party of China. He was the vice chairman of the central government of the Chinese Soviet Republic. He commands the Red Fourth Army.
And the text makes a real point to emphasize that Zhang had 100,000 elite soldiers under his command.
100,000. That is a staggering amount of military and political leverage.
It really is. And the turning point in the author's narrative happens when Zhang's massive forces meet up with the Central Red Army, which was led by Mao Zedong.
And here is the critical imbalance the author highlights. When they finally join forces, Mao only has slightly more than 10,000 soldiers left.
Wow!
Yeah, you have Zhang sitting on over 100,000 and Mao with just 10,000.
Right.
The author argues that because of this massive numerical advantage, Zhang's ego completely takes over. He basically looks at the math and concludes that he should be the boss.
So, in the parlance of our text, Zhang took himself as a dish.
He absolutely took himself as a dish.
The math essentially broke his ability to operate within the collective. He couldn't conceive of a dynamic where he wasn't the primary focus.
Right.
He looked down on Mao, and according to the essay, this arrogance triggered intense covert and overt strife between the two factions.
And the result of that strife is what the author really wants us to focus on here. Because of this demand for superiority, Zhang eventually leaves the party central committee.
He separates from the collective entirely.
Yes. And the author dramatically contrasts Zhang's peak moment, commanding 100,000 elite troops, with his final days.
Oh, yeah.
The text notes that Zhang ultimately froze to death in a shabby nursing home in a suburb of Toronto, Canada.
Which is such a stark image. And the author frames this tragedy within his own specific worldview.
How so?
Well, he describes Mao as a genius, quote, placed here by the greatest creator. He argues that despite Mao's occasional impoverishment, his courage and foresight were completely unmatched.
Okay.
So the text's argument is that when Mao's comrades, like Zhang, let their own egos convince them that they were the special dishes, their tragedies became absolutely inevitable.
I do have to push back on the author's methodology here just a bit. I mean, we are taking a massive, highly complex geopolitical and military conflict involving well over 100,000 troops, immense ideological differences, wartime strategies.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And we're boiling all of it down to a simple interpersonal lesson about one guy's inflated ego. It's a bit reductive, right? Treating historical geopolitics as just a philosophical fable.
Oh, histories are rarely that clean, certainly. But looking at why the author reduces it this way reveals the core mechanics of his philosophy.
Okay, tell me more about that.
He intentionally contrasts the grand scale of the 100,000 elite troops with the pitiful nature of freezing alone in a Toronto nursing home.
I'll say.
He wants to vividly illustrate the sheer cliff-like drop that arrogance engineers.
So the higher the ego climbs, the more fatal the fall.
Exactly. The lesson is about the specific danger of separation. Zhang's ego convinced him he was superior to the whole. And the text is making the argument that separating from the collective because you feel superior is intellectually and spiritually fatal.
Yeah, because when you act like a dish, you isolate yourself.
Right.
And when you isolate yourself, you end up out in the cold, both metaphorically and in Zhang's narrative case, literally.
Literally out in the cold, exactly.
Now, most of us listening aren't commanding a 100,000-person army.
Speak for yourself.
Huh. Right. So it's easy to think, well, this level of ego doesn't apply to me. But the author brings this exact same dynamic down to a much more intimate scale.
He really does.
He applies it to a community he built himself, and then he applies it to his own deeply embarrassing personal life experiences.
Yeah, he shifts from the grand stage of history to the reality of communal living. He brings up a group called Lifechanyuan,
Right.
which, for context, is a controversial utopian-style community the author himself founded.
Right, and he notes that at the time of writing this essay, this community had existed for 17 years.
Okay.
Originally, they had over 2,000 members, who he refers to as genuine celestials. But he admits that the group has dwindled down to less than 200 or 300 people.
And his diagnosis for why thousands of people left is exactly the same as his diagnosis for the historical military conflict.
Really?
Yeah, he says those who left were the ones who thought of themselves as dishes.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
How does acting like a dish actually fracture a utopian community?
Well, when 2,000 people try to live together, friction is inevitable.
Naturally.
But if even a fraction of those people believe they are special, if they think they are the prime rib, like you said earlier,
Right.
they expect the environment to cater to them, they feel they are above sweeping the floors, or they demand their unique spiritual insights be prioritized above everyone else's.
They refuse to blend in.
Exactly. They refuse to blend in. The author says the remaining 200 or 300 people are honest people.
People who simply don't feel superior.
Right. They don't carry the heavy, demanding burden of ego, and thus they're the ones who actually get to stick around and enjoy the stunning scenery of life's journey.
So ego destroys the collective, whether it's an army or a commune.
Absolutely.
But the sharpest, most uncomfortable point the author makes actually comes at his own expense.
Oh, this story is amazing.
He completely throws himself under the bus to prove his point with a personal anecdote. So it's 1994. The author is driving alone through the jungle in the Binga region of northern Matabeleland province, Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And he's driving a dilapidated open-top Jeep.
He sets the scene so vividly. So he drives into a small town and immediately encounters this chaotic situation.
Right.
There's a large crowd of people booing and yelling at a drunken native man. And as the author arrives in his Jeep, the drunken man suddenly breaks away from the crowd.
Oh, boy.
He runs straight over to the author, points his index finger right at him, and starts yelling, "This is my boss! This is my boss!"
See, this is exactly where the ego trap snaps shut.
Yep.
The author admits that in that split second, he felt his dignity was being violated by this finger pointing.
His ego flared up.
He felt he was being mocked or, inappropriately touched by a situation he felt fundamentally above.
Right.
So instead of playing along or diffusing the tension, he sternly and loudly yells back at the man, "I am not your boss."
He enforced a hierarchy that only existed in his own head. The author notes that the drunken man was likely just trying to flatter him or maybe deflect the crowd's hostile attention away from himself.
Right, just a deflection.
But instead, the man gets publicly and harshly rejected. The man grimaces and walks away. But the reaction of the crowd is the real consequence here.
They turn on him.
They completely do. They keep laughing at the drunk man, but they shift their judgment onto the author.
Wow.
They look at him as an unworthy creature. They see a man sitting in a dilapidated Jeep taking himself entirely too seriously.
A man who couldn't read the room and just couldn't take a joke.
Exactly.
And the author writes that over 25 years later, this memory is still painfully vivid for him.
That's a long time to hold on to that.
Right. He still feels intense regret and annoyance at how ugly his attitude was in that moment. He realizes in hindsight that he should have just befriended the guy.
Yeah.
He says he should have danced with him, wiggled his hips, and made everyone happy. But because he thought he was awesome, because he thought he was a dish, he ended up totally humiliated and alienated.
It's just such a perfect example.
And this maps so perfectly onto the everyday frustrations we all experience. I mean, think about the intense rush of road rage.
Oh, definitely.
Someone cuts you off and you just lose your mind.
Yeah.
You aren't just angry because it's dangerous. You're enraged because how dare they do that to me?
Exactly. The to me part is the ego.
Right. Or think about witnessing someone absolutely snapping at a customer service worker over just a minor mistake with their order. It's that instant toxic flare-up of the "don't you know who I am" instinct.
And the incredible irony of the "do you know who I am" reaction is that it achieves the exact opposite of its goal.
Every single time. You demand respect, but you just end up looking entirely pathetic to everyone watching.
You look like a guy sitting in a Jeep yelling, "I am not your boss," while an entire town just cringes at you.
Yes. Oh, that's exactly it.
It's the paradox of demanding recognition. Whether it's leaving a community of 2,000 people because you won't do the chores, or alienating a crowd in a jungle town in Zimbabwe, or, screaming at a barista, the root issue is identical.
Which is what?
It is the absolute refusal to be ordinary.
Wow.
And this raises an essential question about how we should actually interact with the world to avoid this trap. The author answers it by bringing in a quote from Laozi's Tao Te Ching.
Oh, interesting.
He reflects that if he had truly internalized the Tao Te Ching before that incident in Zimbabwe, he wouldn't have made such a low-level, embarrassing mistake. The quote he highlights is, "All glare tempered, all dust smoothed."
All glare tempered, all dust smoothed.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. But how does the author interpret that in a practical, day-to-day sense?
Well, it means actively removing the sharp, abrasive edges of your ego.
Okay.
It means choosing to blend with the world rather than demanding the world organize itself around you. The author explained it practically. To smooth your dust means to mingle with the dust of the world.
Like getting your hands dirty.
Yeah, and it means treating everyone, even a beggar, with profound courtesy and absolutely never considering yourself superior to anyone you interact with. You temper your glaring light so you don't blind the people around you.
Because if you just blend in as dust, you become bulletproof.
Yes.
When you don't expect special treatment, a minor inconvenience or an awkward interaction doesn't shatter your reality.
Exactly. The profound insight here isn't just some moral imperative to be nice to people. The insight is that ordinary is bulletproof.
Ordinary is bulletproof. I like that.
By smoothing your dust and refusing to be a dish, you become entirely immune to the slights, the rejections, and the social failures that absolutely devastate arrogant people.
Which really brings us to the ultimate, rather blunt conclusion of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
We've gone from analyzing our microscopic place under the starry skies to tracking the tragic ends of military leaders whose egos isolated them in Toronto,
Right?
down to cringing at a horribly handled interaction in a Jeep in Zimbabwe.
Hmm.
And the through line across all of these scenarios is undeniably consistent.
It really is.
Thinking you are a dish, believing that you are fundamentally superior or separate or more important than the collective around you, is just a one-way ticket to humiliation. The text concludes with a line that strips away all the high-minded philosophy and leaves you with a very raw, inescapable truth.
It's quite a line.
The author writes that if you look down on ordinary people and separate yourself from the masses, then no matter how incredibly awesome you think you are actually nothing more than flatulence in the breeze.
It certainly leaves an impression.
It does.
But it highlights the absolute weightlessness of arrogance. An inflated ego takes up space. It might be noticeable for a brief, unpleasant moment, but ultimately it evaporates. It has absolutely no substance.
Nothing more than flatulence in the breeze. It's hard to argue with that imagery.
Truly impossible to argue with.
So here is the direct application for you listening today. Keep this insight in your back pocket.
Yeah.
The very next time you feel your ego starting to swell, the next time you feel that hot flash of being slighted because someone didn't treat you with the exact level of reverence you expected.
Or the next time you're tempted to unleash a "don't you know who I am?"
Right. Pause. Remember the buffet. Remember the starry sky.
Yeah.
And remember the phrase, "Don't be a dish."
Such good advice.
But before we wrap up completely, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to ponder on your own.
Okay.
The author heavily emphasizes the safety and wisdom of blending in, of smoothing our dust, and being perfectly humbly ordinary.
Right, that's the core message.
But here is the lingering question. If everyone aggressively tries to be ordinary, and everyone refuses to stand out or take charge out of fear of their own ego, who actually steps up to lead?
Oh, that's a good point.
Does the pursuit of total humility inherently prevent greatness?
Mm.
Or is accepting that you aren't a dish the actual secret requirement for achieving something truly great?